already. I'm so thrilled to be a part of it and so grateful for all the hard work of so many people who were sort of came together to make this a reality, to Jerry, to you, Elizabeth, to, of course, to Bill and Danielle for your incredible presentations, and to Dawn for pulling it all together, and David for bringing people in, and just you guys for showing up from the door. It's an amazing thing, and there's so much energy in the room, and I'm so grateful to all of you for being here on what I think is a Tuesday night, which I keep getting confused about what day it is because it's such a busy time. But I'm Allison Gustavson, and I'm running for state representative for the towns of Manchester, Hamilton, Wenham, Ipswich, Rowley, and Topsfield. I'm a mom. My husband and I, he's actually third generation Ipswich, but we're now raising our children in Manchester. I've been a teacher. I managed a small family business for 10 years, and I founded an organization to invigorate civic engagement in our community. And that's really sort of the underlying pulse of this campaign, is that I think we just really need to get out of our corners and bring people together to really substantively and proactively address the many, many critical issues facing our district. Education, our environment and climate change, obviously, and our economic and fiscal well-being. We've had 20 years with our current representative, and I think it's really time to take some proactive leadership and new energy and put our attention towards the next 20 and really sort of look towards our future with foresight and clarity, and put a sustained effort towards achieving those goals. So, and I'm also really stepping into this new leadership role because I believe wholeheartedly, and this gets to the heart of what we were just, those incredibly powerful poems and what you were just saying, Bill, that it's not enough to raise our children to be prepared for the world, but we must also really raise the world to be worthy of our children. That's just like sort of the driving force behind what I'm doing. My kids are 9 and 12, and I look at what we're leaving them with, and so I think it's up to all of us to really change that narrative. Last week I was actually fortunate enough to speak at an event about Orchestra on the Hill, arts and music in Ipswich, and as I was sort of thinking about my remarks in preparation for that event, I was just thinking about how much arts and music really have the unique capacity to bring out our shared humanity, have us sort of engender compassion and sort of connect us to each other and to ourselves in a more deep and meaningful way. And I think nature and the natural world really is the other half of that equation. And here in this spectacular district, we have no shortage of opportunities to really connect with the natural world. Our open spaces, beaches, marshes, rivers, really the landscape is unparalleled here, and we're also very fortunate to live here. And I think we need to really be stewards of that landscape, to leave it for future generations. And experiencing the natural world ourselves really kind of is not only for recreation and pleasure and enjoyment, but really ties us and sort of reminds us how directly connected we are with the ecosystem and how much our survival really depends on it. So, we're very lucky here to have so many stewards of the environment in our community, and I really desperately want to work at the State House so I can be an ally and an advocate in that work. So I can say that I think we can all probably agree that we are living in pretty extraordinary times. But in my life, I've had a lot of experiences that have really demonstrated to me that sometimes our deepest problems can be really catalysts and provoke us to evolve both as individuals and as a culture. On 9/11, I was just under the second tower as the plane pierced the Twin Tower right above my head, and it was a profound, you can imagine, profound experience that really caused me to reevaluate my professional trajectory at the time. So I thought to myself, are we going to respond to hate with more hate, or could we instead look towards raising children to be compassionate global citizens with the skills necessary to tackle complex issues? So, I decided to change course entirely, enroll in an elementary education program to be certified with a specialization in multicultural international education. And then I went to Egypt and spent a little over a year teaching in Cairo, which was its own magnificent experience. And similarly, after this 2016 election, which we all definitely remember, I decided, like we were all grappling with the implications of that election, I decided to form an organization, Essex County Number 6 Indivisible, as a new and vigorous forum for civic engagement in our community. So for those of you who may not know, Indivisible was a guide that was drafted by a group of former congressional staffers just after the election to kind of teach grassroots organizers how to really sort of cultivate a plan to really kind of respond to what we knew was coming down the pike from the administration. So I really wanted us to take action here as a community, but I also really had a sort of a broader vision of creating a new community and a new environment where people could really re-engage, sort of re-educate themselves about the political process and civics in general. I think a lot of people felt like we'd fallen asleep at the wheel a little bit. So re-educate ourselves, rediscover a sense of our own voice and our own agency within the political process, and then ultimately reimagine a new form of participatory democracy from the ground up, just as Joe was suggesting we needed. And so it was amazing. We started with 12 people in my living room and grew to over 1,000 active members, many of whom were never politically engaged before. I'm really thrilled to report that the group is now under new leadership and thriving. And that's sort of to my point as well, with all due respect to our 20-year incumbent, I think it's really, when we encourage new leaders to emerge, our community is strengthened. So like I said, last year was about resistance. This year it's about representation. So that's what I'm here to do. And I think, our current representative has really used his time in office, as Elizabeth pointed out, very differently than I would. He has long held an A rating from the NRA because he has almost always adhered to their legislative priorities. And I instead, I support common sense gun regulation because it's common sense. It doesn't violate our freedoms any more than, seatbelts in cars and fences around swimming pools violate our freedoms to drive or swim. So I think we really need to change the conversation around gun regulation and gun reform and make it a nonpartisan public health issue, which it really is. So that's one way I think we really need to redirect how we address these issues. As Elizabeth also mentioned, on women's issues, he's been a very weak advocate at best, often voting in direct contradiction to our best interest. He supported mandatory waiting periods and a state-sponsored script to be read to women seeking abortions. He supported abstinence-only sex education, which we know fails our children.
That works really well.
That's one I always just like. Yeah, it works like a charm. Exactly. It's hard to believe. And then, he voted against funding for, essential family planning services, including STI screening and treatment and birth control and cancer screening. These are just these times, which now more than ever in recent memory, we really need to unconditionally defend the woman's right to make her own health care and reproductive decisions, and ensure that access to reproductive health care, education, and contraception are non-negotiable. This is, it's back at the forefront of our minds, and we really need strong leadership in that direction.
Amen to that.
Thank you.
Amen to that.
So, while I definitely will be advocating on behalf of those values and many more important priorities in the State House, I also will be paying equal attention to our needs here at home because I know that constituent services really is an important part of this role. And I mentioned in the beginning that I manage a small business, and what it was I managed a commercial industrial office building in Peabody. So I really witnessed firsthand doing that job for 10 years how much these sort of interruptions and things that arise unexpectedly can really impact our ability to function in our daily lives. We had a hot water heater exploding, or a threshold that you couldn't get a wheelchair access, or a sudden illness that meant that a tenant was under financial hardship and needed to sort of reevaluate how they were going to move forward. All of these things are really. I get it because I had that job, and then I also get it just because that's my nature. And I always respond very, quickly and effectively because I'm a little type A, and that's just how I am anyway. But I also just am wired to want to help when I see a problem. That's just who I am as a person. So I'm really excited about that part of this job, actually, because I think it'll give me even greater access to helping and supporting people as they struggle in their daily lives. It's kind of an exciting aspect of this role. But in general, I think we really can't just sort of respond to issues as they arise. I heard on NPR not too long ago, they were talking about, actually it was about South Africa, but it just, the phrasing really landed with me. They were saying that they suffer from chronic short-termism in some regard. I don't even remember what they were talking about. But chronic short-termism. And I think if we really suffer from chronic short-termism, we're never going to get anywhere towards meeting our challenges, much less achieving any goals that we may be setting for ourselves. So in terms of those goals, number one, of course I mentioned education. I think educational excellence for every child at every level is, absolutely non-negotiable. It's just crucial. It's not only a moral imperative, it's also in the best interest of all Massachusetts communities to have all of our children educated to the best of our ability. It makes no sense to tie a student's, the quality of a student's education to the property value of their parents' home. That's just, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't compute. And one of the, in terms of getting to the root of the problem, the Chapter 70 funding formula has been outdated and incomprehensible and shortchanging our students and our schools for such a long time now. There are so many, this is the formula for distributing education funding through the state. There's so many, the landscape has shifted so dramatically since that formula was put in place. Healthcare costs have skyrocketed, special ed costs have skyrocketed, and we really need to dig in and sort of recalibrate that formula to make a more equitable education funding distribution. And I'm also a really strong advocate for early screening for special education, particularly with literacy issues, because not only does it save tons of heartache down the road, when you catch a literacy issue that's been sort of undiagnosed for years, it's much more difficult to remediate, but it's also more costly. So it's just early screening can save on so many fronts. And one final sort of note about education in general is I think we also can probably agree that it's incredibly urgent that we, more important than ever, that students really receive a robust civics education and media literacy. Because, when students don't understand civics, they lack very basic information about how our neighborhoods, towns, states, and nation function. And then that results in a low voter turnout, which then, as we can see, impacts every aspect of our lives. So my opponent has, at least for the last 5 legislative sessions, and maybe even more, co-sponsored voter ID legislation, which, since we don't have a voter fraud problem here, it really is a solution in search of a problem. It's trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist here. And I really think we need to sort of actively empower the vote rather than try and find ways to disempower it. And moreover, just to really put our attention towards solving the many critical issues that we do face. And really start to think big on all of these different fronts so that we can see our district thrive from classrooms to clam pots. Yeah, it's cute on the back of our shirt. But, that brings me to climate change and, one of the central purposes of why we're all gathered here this evening. First of all, I believe in it. We all believe in it. It's real. It's here. It's man-made. We can really keep kicking this can down the road. I mean, really, we can't. But we can theoretically keep kicking the can down the road until the road is flooded and littered with cans, and really, or really come to terms with the realities and look squarely at the situation. You're saying this weather is unbelievable. It's the hottest summer, except for the last was the hottest summer. The hottest summer, the flooding is getting increasingly threatening and just really extraordinary. Hurricane, all of this stuff.
Foresters.
So, yeah, we could all just sort of do a round robin of all the scary things that are coming down the pipe. We've got rising seas, warming seas, ocean acidification, droughts, extreme storm. I mean, all of these different things that we all know are associated with the challenges associated with climate change. But we really, I think here too, I'm glad you said what you did about the sort of ray of light and optimism, because I think it's there. There's especially here in Massachusetts, we have such an abundance of an extraordinary wealth of expertise in the scientific community, with research and recommendations, and really ideas of how to proactively address this issue. We just really need to sort of gather our forces and really work together to prevent an enormous environmental, financial, and human toll. I think we just really, it's a matter of mustering the political will and really taking a hard look at climate smart planning and policy, assessing our vulnerability, and then working together to protect our homes, our communities, our local economies, and our way of life. So I see sort of addressing climate change, just to bring it down to brass tacks for a moment, as sort of taking a two-pronged approach. We have to mitigate our impact on the environment on the one hand, and then manage the consequences on the other. So in terms of mitigating our impact, I wholly support the carbon tax. I can elaborate on the carbon tax if you want me to, but just basically, as a sort of not a tax really, it's a misnomer, but a fee-based system that then redistributes money collected from fossil fuels coming into the Commonwealth to households and businesses, and then sort of sequestering a certain percentage of that money to invest in transportation and clean energy, which I think is just a fabulous plan. And really, the studies show that I think in 20 years, implementing this carbon tax, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is, in 20 years we could go back to 50% of 1990 levels of carbon emissions by implementing this carbon tax, and also add something like 2.8 million jobs to the American economy. So that's, I think that, they're going to, anyway, I support the idea. And secondly, I think we really need to make robust investments in the renewable sector, so there's obviously solar, wind, energy storage, all of these industries that are just bursting with potential. We really need to harness that potential and make it a reality here in Massachusetts, removing the barriers to those sectors really exploding the way they could. And that also includes things like electric vehicles. And I think even here in our district, ecotourism, there's just so much opportunity here, unharvested opportunity, really. And lastly, on the impact side, I think we need a comprehensive water management strategy, including regional water withdrawal planning, and sort of just, we really need to take a sort of a wholehearted too, but a really global look at how we're using water in the region. And water is one of those things that, like so many other things, we don't pay attention to it until it's a major problem, whether there's a drought or it's flooding, and then we all kind of go back to normal and it's not a major problem, but it is a sort of a quiet creeping crisis that if we could get all the stakeholders and all the various water boards in the same room and work together consistently to hash out, there is such a possibility to create water resiliency far into the future, but we just have to really have the leadership to bring those things, to make it a reality. It's not going to happen on its own. And then in terms of just managing the consequences, but there's, again, so many recommendations for how to become climate resilient and adaptable with infrastructural improvements that are done, these sort of nature-based green solutions, and really just take a look at all of our infrastructure plans with climate change in mind, so looking at those models that kind of look out 25 and 50 years into the future and really factoring that into the equation. So I think really here in Massachusetts, we've been a leader in so many other ways. We really have the opportunity in the Commonwealth, but also right here in our beautiful coastal district to become a model for climate adaptation and resiliency, but really only if we take that opportunity. And we've done that before, and we've taken big, sort of, not risks, but we've taken initiative before, and it's really panned out. The Life Sciences Initiative is one great example where we made significant strategic investments in the life sciences sector 10 years ago, and it's resulted in thousands of jobs across the economic spectrum, and really made Massachusetts a global leader in that sector. And and again, my opponent voted against that when it was first being proposed, and then just recently when it was up for renewal, he voted in favor of it because it proved effective. And I think we need leaders who really see the potential ahead of the game, and not just kind of once something has already panned out. If we really want to demonstrate unequivocally that an investment in the environment is an investment in the economy, which I think we can. I think those two things really can go hand in hand. So in general, I feel like my campaign is about all of these issues and all the work that we really need to do, but it's also so much more sort of qualitative and not just quantitative. I think we really need to start looking at all of these issues in a non-binary way and really kind of take a look and really bring people set the table so that people can come to the table and really participate in a productive conversation, because, ramming an agenda down someone's throat is not the way to go. I think we really need to kind of come together as a community. And we've seen so much lately. I think we all kind of feel the stress of politics is so complex and it's kind of such a mess right now. But I think when we remember that, politics at its root is really where we make important decisions about how to live and work together, and come back to addressing these issues as a community, and from the ground up, really build a strong foundation from the ground up. We have an incredible opportunity to be stewards of where we go from here. So I'm really grateful to be here. I really hope to earn all of your support, and I just would love to have you all join me in this effort, because it definitely takes a village. And thank you again for being here, and I take any questions that you might